All right, folks, I'm back. I think that's the longest break I've ever taken from this channel, and it's because I was out of town, and I don't have a laptop or anything, so I'm not going to upload when I'm on the road. But now that I'm back, I can resume regularly scheduled, unscheduled uploads. Been almost 3 weeks, so what a 3 weeks to miss. There has been so much that I've just been dying to vent about, but we'll have to skip most of that, because guess what? We're on to the new, latest, most absurd, ridiculous thing I've ever seen, and that's price controls for groceries. I mean, you can't make this shit up. This is perhaps the most disastrous thing that has been proposed by any politician in the 21st century, and I think I'm being kind by saying in the 21st century, because the last time we had something this awful and destructive to American society was the Great Depression. It was the New Deal. And for those of you who don't remember how the New Deal went, it was illegal to grow your own food, and the federal government was buying up crops, buying up food while people were starving and burning them. They were burning food to stop people from eating. That's what the New Deal looked like. That's what the Democrats always talk about as their greatest achievement in American history, the New Deal, how they saved the Depression, or they stopped the Depression, after 15 years. Under, FDR was president for, a decade and a half. More than that, maybe. Was it 16 years? No, I think it was about 15. He was in his fourth term, and then finally, sometime after he died, we had burned enough food, we had starved enough people to death in America that the Depression was over, and things were good again. And I guess that's what Kamala wants to put us all back through, because price controls on groceries is about as close to burning food in front of starving people's faces as you can come. For those who might be a little rusty on supply and demand, here's why price controls on something like food ends in famine. It's a very simple lesson. The 10,000-foot overview is that the way supply and demand works is that when prices are determined by the relative interplay between how much of a product is available for purchase and how much people are willing to spend to purchase that product, how much demand there is in terms of money. And so let's say that the food market in America, okay, these are not accurate numbers, but let's just take it as an easy example. Let's just say that the annual food industry is a $10 billion industry. That's what Americans have to spend on food. That's their budget. The whole country has a budget of $10 billion. You know what? Let's make the numbers smaller. Let's just make it $100. Make it real simple. Let's say the budget for something like bread, okay, the size of the market, it's a $100 market. And likewise, in that same year, 100 loaves of bread are produced by the bread industry. So each loaf of bread ends up selling for a price of $1. Okay, so supply is 100 loaves of bread. Demand for bread is $100. So therefore you end up with $1 a piece for each loaf of bread. Then let's say that next year the wheat harvest is not so great. There's some kind of blight, and let's say they're only able to the bread industry is only able to produce 90 loaves of bread. But the consumer still has a budget for bread of $100. And so that $100 gets divided up among only 90 loaves of bread. And so the price of bread increases to around $1.11. This is what happens in a normal market economy. Then what should happen if the price of bread is getting sufficiently high enough, let's take an extreme example. Let's say that there's a really, really bad bad year, bad harvest, and so there are only 50 loaves of bread, and so the price of bread doubles. It goes from $1 to $2 because there's only 50 loaves of bread, but it's it's a $100 market. There's $100 worth of demand from the consumers. Bread prices shoot up to $2 a loaf. And the consumer goes, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm paying $2 for a loaf of bread. I'm only able to buy half as much bread as I did last year because, of course, there's only half the amount of bread being produced. Well, guess what, folks? When the price of something doubles like that, it sends a signal to the market that, hey, there's money to be made in bread. There's a lot of demand here for bread. People are willing to pay twice as much as they did before for bread. And so, as an investor, as someone looking to make money in business, you go, well, gee, I want to produce the thing that costs more. Bread is going at a really high price right now. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to produce more bread. I'm going to plant wheat. I'm going to build mills. I'm going to buy ovens so I can bake bread. And there's all of a sudden a rush into the bread market. It sends a signal to business, hey, if you want to make money, go make bread. And so guess what? The problem of there being half as much bread because of whatever reason, bad harvest that year, there's a big shortage of bread. It sends a signal to everyone, there's a gold rush in bread. Go make bread. And if everybody rushes in to make more bread, guess what happens? Supply of bread goes back up. Next year, maybe instead of having 100 loaves of bread available for purchase, maybe so many people rushed in, now there's 120 loaves on the market, and so the price of bread falls below $1. In which case, it might not be profitable for some marginal producers, and they get out of the bread business, and the supply goes back down to 100. But the point is, this is how basic supply and demand works. This is why we have markets, because it's very important to always have a consistent and sufficient supply of food. We want to make sure that people are always incentivized to produce food for our very hungry population. And so what is it that Kamala Harris is proposing, and how does it differ? How does it contrast with the vision that I just laid out of a very simple bread market? Well, the difference is Kamala's new price control regime that she has proposed on Friday, it changes one small thing in the bread market, or in the market for food in general. This is about groceries she was talking about. It keeps the price fixed. The price is unable to fluctuate. Everything else I discussed can fluctuate freely. The number of participants in the market, producers, the amount of food being produced, the costs of inputs, which I didn't really discuss, market barriers to entry, fixed costs like regulatory compliance. All of these things are variables, but what will remain fixed is the market, or I shouldn't even say the market price. It's not a market price at this point. The price of the product. The price of a loaf of bread, in my example, it was $1. It will stay there, no matter what happens. No matter how much bread is produced. If they produce 200 loaves, the price is not going to go down. Or, well, it could, but that's never your problem when you have price controls. It's too much of anything. The problem comes in when, as I discussed, for some reason, the supply, let's say there are only 50 loaves of bread. Let's go back to that example. So we've got a bad year for some reason. The participants in the bread market are only able to churn out 50 loaves. And so for that year, there's half as much bread as there was the year before. Now, in the previous example, What happened was that drove the price of bread up, and it caused a rush of people to want to get into the bread market to start producing bread, and pushed that supply of bread back up. And the reason that happened was because of the higher price. People were chasing the higher profit margin. That was why they wanted to produce bread. In Kamala Harris's America, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen at all. There would be no incentive to produce more bread. If there was less bread produced in a given year, the bread would still be selling at $1. Once those 50 loaves of bread sold for $1, that would be it. No one would be incentivized who wasn't already producing bread and, able to make money selling it for $1. No new producers would be moving into that market to pick up the slack. And the reason why is that everyone in the economy, everything in the economy operates on the margins. And so at $1 a loaf, there are so many producers who are able to make money, who are able to make a profit selling bread for $1. But some people in their business, in their operation, they would only be able to make a profit selling bread if bread cost $1.10 a loaf. Just using that as an example, or $1.50, or $2. As the price goes up, you entice these people into the market. It all of a sudden becomes profitable for them to participate in this market and to produce goods for the consumers who are left there holding their money, waiting for something to buy. When the price is fixed and the supply goes down, no new producers are enticed to fill that void. There's going to be no new production. There's not going to be a rush to produce more of those goods. It will simply be a matter of you get what you get. And that's the best case scenario. In reality, when you fix one price, it messes with all of the adjacent markets. It has ripple effects. But we don't even need to get into those. Just keeping it to a very simple example is enough to see the problem here. You don't have to think about the broader implications for the economy as a whole, which would be disastrous. All you need to know is that the market for food would no longer clear. Demand would perpetually exceed supply because the supply is fixed at a given price. Generally speaking, all else equal. So in my example from before, if there's a blight that affects the entire wheat crop, that cuts yields in half, if the price of bread is fixed, no one's planting extra wheat to make up for it. They're not going to incur more cost if they're unable to make more of a profit. And so these items that are under price controls will just sell out quickly because the price will not be high enough to keep those items in stock. It'll come in waves and batches, and when new stock comes in for a short time, it'll be available. It'll sell out quickly, and this will lead to everyone wanting to show up when the product first comes in. And this is what is known as a bread line. Everyone has to line up when bread is available because it's not something that you can just walk into the store and get at any time. This was the stereotype that we used to use to mock communism. Bread lines are synonymous with communism. And this is what Kamala Harris is proposing. So just like with rent control, you get less housing. With price controls on food, you get less food. This isn't difficult. It's not complicated. It's well proven. Everyone who is involved knows that this is the case. It is just craven politics to be proposing price controls on food of all things. Because, it's one thing if you pick something that is, let's say, less existential. You try and propose a price control on that, for cheap political points. It's bad, it's stupid, but you're not killing people. Price controls on food will kill people. Price controls on food is telling American business, don't produce more food. We have enough. We don't need more food. All those people, they don't need to eat. Because outside some great technological advancement that allows you to produce more of a given good for the same cost, the only way for the production, for the supply of a given good to rise is for the price to rise. And that's why, even though price controls are never a good idea because they don't fix things, they don't help things, something you can never, ever, ever control is the price of food. The price of food must be as organic and unencumbered as possible. It needs to be as accurate as possible so that we always have as much food as we need, regardless of the price. Because paying a lot of money for food, and I'm someone who complains about the price of food all the time. I'm someone who complains about inflation. I don't like it. And this isn't even a discussion about inflation, by the way. I'm not getting into inflation here. Because in reality, we know that what they're really trying to do with these price controls is mask inflation that was created by the government. But I don't want to overcomplicate this discussion because it's incredibly simple. If you fix the price of any good lower than whatever the natural market price would have been, you're going to get less of that good produced. There's going to be a shortage. People are going to have to get in line to buy food. And when the food runs out, everyone who didn't make it to the front of the line will starve. That's Kamala Harris's ideal vision for America. That's her idea of making America a better place. That's the best case scenario if she gets everything she wants. I could not make a better case against this woman if I tried. So with that said, I'm glad to be back. I need to get back to complaining on the internet about things I have no control over, like idiot politicians and death and destruction, global nuclear war. Single women pay $200 an hour plus to a therapist to pretend to be their friend. I talk into my phone, pacing back and forth across the floorboards, complaining about powerful people burning down our society, and just hope that I'm not the only one who cares. That's what I find therapeutic. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one.